everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and today we're going to be talking about this Total War Warhammer, The Art of the Games, a little booklet that Creative Assembly was so lovely and nice enough to send me a little while ago, and I wanted to check with them to make sure it was cool to talk about before I talked about it, because there is some kind of interesting stuff in here. You may have seen some of it appearing on some other channels or talked about on Reddit or what have you, but I just thought I would make a video about it and my thoughts on all the goodies that are within this book. Granted, I don't think it's necessarily as huge of a deal as some people are making it out to be, but we will go ahead and get into that. So for those unaware, this book is basically one of a there are two versions. There's a softback version, a hardback version that they are selling, which basically includes just a bunch of artwork of the game, which you can just sort of see here is just kind of different pages of art of everything that's been in the game. You traditionally would have found a lot of this in a collector's edition, but obviously Total War Warhammer 3 did not have a collector's edition. But on the bright side, this also includes a fair bit of art from the original or the other two games and some of their DLCs. So that's nice. It's not just a art book on Warhammer 3. It is a art book on the entire trilogy. That being said, there is some pretty interesting little things to talk about in here. So let's not waste any more time and get into it. Though the last thing I want to say before we jump into looking at these images is that I think it is very important to note that while we can hope and maybe even try to predict seeing some of the things that we're about to look at from within this book, we should not take this as gospel hints about things that are to come. It is much more likely that the things we are looking at are instead bits and pieces that have appeared off of the cutting room floor. So I just don't want anyone to get too amped up about these things. I have some theories about if we're going to see them, where they might show up, and we'll kind of go from there. So without further ado, let's jump on into it. All right, so first up on our little trip through secrets in this book, we have the first image here, which is from the Warriors of Chaos section and just flat out reveals the Chimera. So this is, at least for me, one of my most anticipated monsters that is still missing from Total War Warhammer. I mean, the Chimera, obviously it's a very legendary beast. It exists very prominently in our world's mythology, and in the Warhammer mythology or world, the Chimera is kind of one of the big bads when it comes to truly terrifying creatures that have a lot of power and represent kind of the full unholy might of chaos. The Chimera is pretty much the top dog, next to maybe only the Chaos Dragon as far as the mortal creatures are concerned. Now, here we see that we have three different color variants. We look to see, we have a red, gold, and green version of the creature. Traditionally, I don't believe, no, chimeras could not take any marks of any kind. So it's interesting that we see color variations, as traditionally in Warhammer, they don't do color variations, but it might have been just to try and get a feel for what color the creature should be. Now, obviously, we don't have a chimera, which to me suggests that it was either intended to be with the Warriors of Chaos, but got cut, or maybe is something that we will see here in the future. But for those who are curious what they actually look like, the Warhammer Chimeras have three heads. Well, technically they have four heads if you include their tail. And the head that we see here is the bird-like or the avian head, which is traditionally, I believe, the creature's right head. And then there's a dragon head, and the last head is leonine or cat, like a monstrous beast or cat. And then the tail head is kind of a serpent head sort of thing. But as you can see, that consistently the creature's right head is the bird, and then the center is the dragon, and the left is the kind of mammalian creature. But this is the Chimera Mini, and it is a gorgeous piece. And oh my god, I would love for the Warriors of Chaos to get access to this, to just have a really powerful solo flying monster that can run around kicking butt and taking names. The Chimera itself is actually probably one of the most frightening creatures you could go up against in Warhammer Fantasy. And I mean, yes, in a lore sense, obviously, but I mean that in like an actual gameplay sense, in that these things hit like an absolute truck. I mean, not only do they fly and, you know, they cause terror, but most of them would breathe fire. Some of them could have poisoned attacks, and they would traditionally just they just had a lot of just really nasty rules that combined together made a very, very efficient and spooky monster. Now, I'm gonna say this, and granted, I don't have any evidence to back this up. It's just my thoughts on the matter. If we're lucky enough that when they give us the Blood for the Blood God version 3 pack, if something were to come with it and I got to pick what came with it, this is what I would pick. I would pick the Chimera. There's a number of things we're going to be looking at that are revealed in this art book that didn't make it into the game, at least yet. But I think this is the single most important thing that shows up in the book, that the art book, that did not appear in the game so far. It's just such a iconic and critical monster for the Warriors of Chaos, you know, allowing them to have a singular flying beast that you can recruit into your army that's bigger than a Chimera, or bigger than a Manticore, and doesn't require a mount, I think is such a massive necessary thing that will really allow them to level the playing field with a lot of other factions and just open up some more opportunities. I mean, the Warriors of Chaos are a faction that are heavily defined by monsters, and they just don't really have that many. You know, we have the Manticore, which is also shared with the Dark Elves. We have the Dragon Ogre Shaggots, and we have the Chaos Dragon, which is mostly shared with the other dragon races. And of course, Norska have the Frostworm, which is literally just a Chaos Dragon with some given an icy makeover. But this would truly be like their unique, iconic, big bad monster. That being said, the Chimera is not their only monster that, surprise, surprise, appeared in the Warrior of Chaos section. There was also this little guy. Though funny enough, this creature showed up in the Nurgle section, not the Warriors of Chaos section, which is curious. So this is the great giant spined chaos beast, which is a mouthful, and, you know, kind of very descriptive without really being much of a name. But you could see that it is properly labeled as a chaos beast. Now, the giant spined chaos beast, or giant spiked chaos beast, could take chaos marks. They actually were introduced in the Storm of Magic compendium, and that's the only book they were ever printed in. So they showed up during 8th edition, and you could take them with any chaos army, you know, with marks. You could have an undivided one, but you could also have monogod ones. And here we see they were experimenting with monogod giant spine chaos beasts. Now, this is the undivided one, or the classic artwork. So you may be wondering, what the hell is a giant spine chaos beast? It kind of looks like a freaky chaos spawn that's just really spiky. But the funny thing is, this is, you could kind of think of it as the evolved form, or the monster form of the Chaos Warhound. So if you take a Chaos Warhound and you send it really, really far up into the Chaos Wastes, and it just let it get mutated to a horrific degree, this is the result. And what these creatures are they're these massive predatory beasts who regenerate so quickly that their bodies are constantly producing these spikes, which causes their flesh to be ripping open as they're constantly like pushing out new bony protrusions all over the place. And on top of that, their teeth are constantly growing. So if you were to be watching a giant spined chaos beast, just like able to watch it without it noticing you, it regenerates so quickly that you would be seeing its teeth growing larger and larger until they are pushed out of its mouth by new teeth coming up beneath it, and it just continues that infinitely. So it's this horribly grotesque and muscular creature that is very fast, very strong. It hits pretty hard. You know, it's not the most powerful monster in the Chaos roster by any means of the imagination, but it does come with, it does fill a pretty interesting niche in that it's such a fast and hard-hitting land creature. But the key to it is that it actually was pretty terrifying due to having quite a few special rules. You know, it caused terror, being, you know, a big, ugly, horrifying monster. If I saw that thing running at me, I would be terrified. It is a monster, so you wouldn't see it in a unit. You'd see a singular one running around with a fair bit of health. But the thing about it that was really spooky is it had swift stride, so it could go over any terrain without any penalties at max speed. It had regeneration, so it's constantly healing from any damage it takes, and it has frenzy, so it has that nasty boost to its damage, and it really wants to go all out and just rip your face off. I mean, this thing is a nasty piece of work. And then on top of all that, it even had a bonus rule called spiky, because, you know, it's got spines coming out of it. So the giant spined chaos beast had this rule where basically as long as you were in combat with it, it would constantly be growing new spines and stabbing you. So at the start of every combat phase, you would take damage just by being too close to it, which I think there are some really fun ways they could adapt that, whether it would be a like a damage aura where if it's in base contact with you, it deals damage over time, but only if it's like directly in combat with you or something like that, or has maybe like a very, very small AoE. But this would be a really interesting creature to give to the Warriors of Chaos, especially because the faction is so noted for being really slow generally. Giving them a very fast moving, heavy hitting monster that has basically zero armor. Like it has very little armor, very little resistance to most forms of damage. Like it's got pretty tough skin, so you know it'd probably have an okay armor save, but you know it wouldn't have much in the way of missile resistance or heavy armor, but it would be instead relying on a fairly large health pool and the ability to regenerate, while also being an absolute nightmare in combat due to all of those special rules and abilities. It could really be a very fascinating creature within the Warrior of Chaos roster. And here you can see the miniature that was printed for it. And I mean, it's an ugly creature where it's just got like, it's degloved its own snout. So it's got like all the skins pulled off the snout, and you see how it's the muscles in its thighs are literally exposed because the creature is so rapidly warping and growing all the time that like its flesh is just constantly being ripped open. And one thing you can see here on the actual mini is that the mini was very well designed, so it looks like the spines are literally punching through its skin. It's a disgusting mini to look at, but I think it would be a really, really cool addition, whether to the Warriors of Chaos or even the Mono Gods. I can kind of see why they didn't necessarily pursue this as being available to all of the Mono God factions, but I hope that we get to see this creature in the game in some way, shape, or form, whether that's joining the Warriors of Chaos as like a big monster for them, or joining the Mono Gods as a big monster for them that, you know, its appearance is different depending on what mark it has. But I do hope we get to see it in the game at some point. It's not like by any means the highest on my creatures I want in the game really bad list. I would actually put it maybe in the mid-tier range, but since we know that they have concept art of this creature, meaning that it has been thought about, it has been worked on, I really do hope we get to see it brought to fruition and brought to life, because the more stuff we have in the game, the better, and I don't think there's anyone that would disagree with that. But moving on, we've got chaos of a different sort, which is, of course, the Skaven Verminlord. Now, this piece is very interesting because this is a very bizarre looking Verminlord. It doesn't really matter which version of the Skaven Verminlord you look at, whether you go back to the really old school design from the 6th edition or pre-6th edition age, or you look at the more modern design where we got the like the line of Verminlords here, Team Verminlord, where you have the 4 generic types and then Screech Vermin King here in the front. But the Verminlords that we have now have a very distinct and iconic appearance due to the sheer amount of horns they have and how like large they are. Plus they each have a very iconic appearance to them. This guy looks very, very basic in comparison to his Verminlord brethren, and his horns are very, very small. And he's definitely not based on the older designs for the Verminlord, because the older Verminlords all had the skull face. That they all had like the big skull head. They weren't quite like this. This almost looks like a hybridization of a couple different versions. And also his weapon is just kind of like this boring little harpoon looking thing, when the versions we have now, that seems to be a reference to the Doomglaive, but you can see the Doomglaives are very majestic, huge halberd like things. But so I'm not exactly sure if this piece was supposed to inspire the design of a creature in game. I don't think it is, because on the same page that we have this Verminlord art, it has the art that we actually get to see of the Verminlord known as the Screaming One in game, which the Screaming One is the Verminlord that the player will encounter if you play through the Skaven Vortex storyline. He shows up in the first or second ritual. I think it's the first ritual. But, you know, it's... I don't think this is a, oh my god, this is what the Verminlord's going to look like in the game. Because honestly, I'm really not a fan of this design. I think this is more of just them throwing many designs at the wall and seeing what stuck as far as how they wanted to go with the design of the Screaming One as he appears in the cinematics. And they ended up going with a much more like wall and a face of fire appearance, which you also see in the art book. But so for me, this one is not as big of a deal as the others. This doesn't scream to me, oh, this is like an actual thing we were working on and was meant to be in the game but didn't make it. Personally, I do feel very, very strongly that the Verminlords are in our future. I think we know for a fact there is at least one more piece of Skaven content, which is Thanquol and Bone Ripper. Thanquol has long ago, by this point, like well over a year or two ago, been officially confirmed by developers at Creative Assembly that he will be in the game at some point. We don't know when that's going to happen. We don't know how it's going to happen. You know, we don't know if Thanquol is going to be a piece of free LC that's part of like a big White Dwarf event. We don't know if he's going to be the headliner of a DLC. Personally, I am hoping he's headlining a DLC and we get to see him show up with the Verminlords and the Storm Fiends and the giant rats, you know, horned rat willing, maybe even like a cauldron of 1,000 poxes and plague pontifexes or something. But in any event, I did want to, you know, like show off the piece and look at it. That being said, I don't think that this particular image is anything to get super excited over, though I feel like Verminlord's coming to the game is 100% guaranteed. I don't think we're gonna get this where we get all 4 of the variants created by Games Workshop. I think I would love if that happened. That's not what I'm expecting. I'm kind of expecting them to remain consistent with what they've done with the demons so far, where we will get a Verminlord and then we will get a Exalted Verminlord, and maybe they'll pick one of these designs to represent the regular Verminlord and one of these designs to represent the Exalted Verminlord. And then if we're lucky, maybe we'll get Screech Vermin King as well as a legendary lord or a legendary hero. But yeah, so that's the Verminlord. And then the last thing we're going to look at is, of course, the Metal Wizard. The one missing wizard from the Empire's Colleges of Magic. We do not have a hero version and we do not have a lord version. We only have a legendary lord version. But we do see here that they have a working design for the Empire Gold Wizard. He just isn't in the game. And I would really love to see him in the game, because I mean, Balthazar Gelt is a beast. Nothing is going to change that. I really don't think there's anything they could do to release a hero or lord level gold wizard who would make Gelt not appealing somehow. So I don't know if they, like, I can understand saving him till last because, oh, well, you know, the other lores aren't covered yet, so let's prioritize those. Okay, that makes sense. But it does feel really weird having that one empty slot in the Empire's Colleges of Magic. I do hope we get our Metal Wizard at some point in the near future. That way we can finally go with the Wizards of the Empire. There's quite a few races that are still missing a selection of Lores of Magic, and I really hope Creative Assembly continues to push forward and hopefully give us all of the Lores of Magic that were available to the various races in their tabletop forms. I honestly think the only races that I look at where I could see them not necessarily getting every single Lore of Magic would perhaps be the Wood Elves. Since they got access to high magic and dark magic, I could see them maybe not getting, you know, not going all the way up to 10 Lores of Magic. That is a lot. But I would really like to see, you know, the Lizardmen get have all 8 or all 9 versions of the Slann, give us 9 different versions of Dark Elf Wizards for dark magic in the 8 battle lores, the Lizardmen high magic in the 8 battle lores. The High Elves are done. They have all their wizards. We're still waiting on the Gold Wizard for the Empire. We're still waiting on we're missing like 2 different types of magic for the Ogre Kingdoms. We're missing Death Magic and Heaven's Magic. Yeah, that's right. We're missing Death and Heavens. We have Beasts and we have the Great Maw. So I don't know where my Death Magic and my my Heaven's Magic is, but I would really like to have it. So hopefully that's something that CA will be looking to kind of seal those gaps in as we go. But that's pretty much everything. I'm not gonna go too much longer into it. That's literally all of the images of interest. I literally just sat down, looked through the entire book. Anything else that someone points out, I think they're completely leaping at nothing. If they say there's something else in here, because I just looked through it, I didn't see anything else. But that being said, there are of course many other types of characters and units that have been hinted throughout the games and throughout the just, you know, things that we know are super important to the various races that I hope to see. But I just wanted to go ahead and cover that because I know it's becoming a popular topic, and I just kind of wanted to throw my hat in on the arena like that. So don't have much more to add on that. I hope you all are having a lovely day, and I do want to thank you all so much for watching, and I am hoping to get back to videos on a daily or semi-daily basis, and hopefully that's great. If you haven't, make sure to check me out on twitch.tv/Loremaster of Sotek. I'm getting back to streaming on a much more regular basis as well, and I'd love to have you join me. We talk a lot about Warhammer Fantasy lore and literature on there, and I'm happy to just answer any questions you might have live, and we just hang out and have a good time playing different kinds of video games, though we've been playing a lot of Warhammer 3 lately. And lastly, I just want to give a really big shout out and thank you to all of my patrons. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. I'll be needing to update that list as it's been gathering some new people, so expect to see that appearing on videos again next video. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.